So Sutton Hoo is an Old English place name, Old English being the language of the Anglo-Saxons. So taking the first bit, Sutton means southern settlement, and a hoo is a promontory or raised area of land often overlooking water, which is a really fitting description of where we are. So I'm currently standing in between two of the hoos of Sutton Hoo. Over here we have Tranmere House, and over here is the Royal Burial Ground, and over there is the River Deben. And you can imagine that the burial mounds, when they were originally built, would have been clearly visible for miles around from this high point. Well, we can never be 100% certain who is buried there, but we know it was somebody important enough to have warranted such a lavish funeral. So the burial has been dated to about the early 7th century, and Bede, writing about 100 years later, tells us about Radwold, and he's probably the front runner if we were going to put a name to whoever was buried in the Great Ship Burial. Radwold was king of East Anglia and also part of the Woofing dynasty. The objects in the burial tell us a lot about the person who was buried there. He was a fierce warrior king, he had good trading connections, and we also know he was a UK size 7 shoe. So during the many years that the ship lay buried, water seeped in and together with the acidic soil created an acid bath, and this acid bath rotted away most of the organic material to include the ship's timber. So what was left behind in 1939 for archaeologists to discover was the fossil of a ship peppered with lots of rusty iron rivets. Behind me though you can see a sculptural representation of the ship, full size at 27 metres long. I'd like to introduce you to Mrs. Edith Pretty. Edith Pretty was the landowner and the instigator of the archaeological excavations that took place here at Sutton Hoo in the 1930s. After the Great Ship Burial was discovered in 1939, there was a treasure trove inquest that determined that Mrs. Pretty was the rightful and legal owner of the treasures. However, she very magnanimously donated the treasures to the British Museum for the benefit of the nation, so that maximum amount of people could see them and enjoy them. We work very closely with our friends at the British Museum and have objects back to Sutton Hoo on both short and long-term loan. So there are lots of areas of archaeological significance across the whole Sutton Hoo estate, not just the Royal Burial Ground, but also excavation is ultimately a destructive process. Once you excavate, you can't go back, and that's why recording is so important. So instead we're looking at non-intrusive techniques such as geophysics, which is part of our National Lottery Heritage Fund project, to see what that can reveal about what lies beneath our feet.